Welcome back. This is Two Guys, One Sport. I'm Luke. This is John. We're here to look at week 2 in the Big 12 and preview week 3. We will get started with our number 1 team in the conference, West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia, they took down Youngstown State by the score of 52-17. A little bit of a slow start for the Mountaineers. Will Greer looked a little shaky early on. They looked like they might have been overlooking the Penguins, but they pulled through. Ended up not making much of a game out of it, so they took care of business.
Number 2 in the conference, we have Oklahoma. They played UCLA and they won that game 49-21. They looked a little bit inconsistent at times on the defensive side of the ball, but Chip Kelly's starting to get that offense rolling over there in UCLA. Something to note for Oklahoma, their star running back Rodney Anderson will miss the rest of the season with a knee injury. This is his third major injury in his career. I think he broke his leg back in 2015 and then messed up some vertebrae. Was that last year, 2016?
Yeah, that's unfortunate for the Sooners.
That's going to be a big miss here in the Big 12 because they had a really strong rushing attack with Anderson and Murray in the backfield.
All right, moving on. TCU, they took down SMU in a rain-delayed game on Friday night. I don't know if y'all stayed up to watch that game, but we certainly did, and not a good start for the Frogs. They looked pretty bad on defense, and offense struggled to kind of manage the elements, but they put it together. They came out strong in the second half, ended up putting away SMU, which was, in fact, one of my picks. And so they looked a little sloppy, but they finished strong.
When you're about to take a step up in competition like the Horned Frogs are this week, it's really easy to look past a team like SMU, but they still got the job done. Oklahoma State, they played South Alabama this week. They won 55-13. Taylor Cornelius, we stated last week, started to look like the guy there at Oklahoma State. He did struggle mightily over there against South Alabama. He only had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Also, Justice Hill seemed to be slowed down a lot. He got a couple touchdowns out of the day. Was held to 56 yards rushing. So we'll see what Oklahoma State does here going on this season as they take steps up in competition. And I might look for them to struggle early on.
And after that, we got Baylor. And Baylor went to San Antonio, and they took down UTSA. Another good win for Baylor. They've already beat their win total from last year. So things are looking up. And Charlie Brewer looked to secure the starting quarterback job. And he looked good over there against the Roadrunners. So good for Baylor.
6, Kansas State at 1-1. They played as predicted this week against Mississippi State. They lost 31-10. Allowed 384 rush yards to the Bulldogs, which is seems unusual for a Bill Snyder team as they really want to coach that defense up. This Kansas State has not looked good here in these first couple weeks.
And I don't know if y'all can see this, but Kansas is not in last place. They are in 7th, 1-1. They get the big road victory over the Central Michigan Chippewas. Looked impressive doing it. We caught some of that game, and they looked like a solid, competent football team.
That is not a tough place to win either. Central Michigan is known for pulling some upsets, and the fact that Kansas is able to end that long road losing streak is just really impressive, I think, for the Jayhawks.
Good for the Jayhawks.
Texas Tech, they had their walkthrough game against Lamar this week. They put up 77 points to Lamar's 0. Alan Bowman got the start. He looked really impressive, really consistent. I think he only threw 3 incomplete passes, and that offense kind of got rolling. They're going to be kind of like Oklahoma State. We're going to see how they perform against these better teams coming up.
And we have Texas, and they pulled out the win against Tulsa. They looked good to start. Looked like they were going to roll away with it. And Tulsa fought back and did not look like Texas responded well. And they were able to pull out the win, but I don't know if there's much you can take from that one. Just get ready for USC.
Coming in last at 0-1 after Iowa State had their game canceled the week before. They lost the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy against the Iowa Hawkeyes. I just think that was a really, really tough position Iowa State got put in. Iowa comes in, had a game under their belt. You travel to Iowa, a very strong and consistent Big Ten team. They lost 13-3. That's just, we're going to see improvement from this Iowa State team. Maybe not now, maybe later in the season, but I don't want to measure them just yet based on this first game.
Yeah, world's not over. It's not a horrible loss. They still got their whole season in front of them, so we haven't heard the last of the Cyclones.
Looking ahead to week 3, West Virginia, I was really excited about this game. They were going to play NC State, and this game, unfortunately, has been canceled, but for good reason. We got Hurricane Florence coming in on the East Coast. Hopefully they can reschedule that game because I was really looking forward to that Power 5 matchup and see what Will Greer could do against that defense.
And next up, we have our first conference game of the year. The Oklahoma Sooners travel to Ames to take on Iowa State. Like we said about Iowa State, we don't know much about them yet. They struggled against Iowa, but Iowa's a solid program. Oklahoma, they've come out gangbusters so far this season. Kyler Murray, the loss of Rodney Anderson. Let's see how that affects them. I know they got some running backs ready to pounce on the job, but we'll see how that affects them. Tough trip to Ames, not a fun place to play.
Premier matchup of the week here in the Big 12. TCU will be hosting Ohio State at AT&T Stadium. As we're called, game day is going to be this week. This is going to be a big test for both these teams. I honestly think TCU can play with them. I think they got a chance with Urban Meyer not being there at Ohio State this is the last week of his suspension. This is going to be a real exciting game to watch, I believe, and I think it's going to just be a flip of a coin on who wins.
And then we have Oklahoma State, and they are taking on Boise State. Another big game for the Big 12, trying to prove that they're not in the doormat of the Power 5 conferences. So a big chance for Oklahoma State to take on Boise State and for Taylor Cornelius to kind of improve on his struggles from last week and see if they can take down the Broncos.
Baylor, they will be hosting Duke. I believe this will be a very evenly matched game. I think Baylor's going to have a good chance at starting 3-0, but you got to watch out for those Blue Devils. They did beat them last year when they played at Duke, so I think this will be a really good game to watch.
And we got K-State. They're hosting UT San Antonio. Talked a little bit about the Roadrunners earlier. Baylor seemed to handle them pretty well last week. They're coming on the road to K-State. I look for K-State to manage the game well and hopefully come out with a big W.
Kansas this week will have another chance to get a win against Rutgers. They're hosting them in Lawrence. This is going to be another good game. It's not going to be the most premier matchup of great teams or anything like that, but I think it's those lower level teams that are really going to be pretty evenly matched. And hopefully Kansas can get their second victory of the season. Should be a very good step forward for Coach Beatty.
Yeah, the Jayhawks are actually favored in that one. When's the last time you saw that against a Power 5 team? All right, moving on. Texas Tech, they're taking on Houston. Houston team that looked really good last week, taking down their former coach, Kevin Sumlin. And so, big test. We saw Texas Tech had their big test against Ole Miss. Didn't do too well, but they got a little confidence last week against Lamar. Big win. And so they got Houston coming in. It should be a fun environment up there in Lubbock, and hopefully they can come away with the win.
Another very evenly matched game, I believe, here in the Big 12. Texas will be hosting number 22 USC. This is a big rematch from last year where USC was able to win that game 27-24 in double overtime. I believe both these teams are really trying to find their identity. Teams with a lot of tradition and a lot of hype around these teams. We'll see if Texas finally decides to step up and play like they're supposed to, or if USC can play behind that number 22 ranking and pull away with the win. Looking at our pick'ems for the week, last week John was able to go 3-0. I went 2-1. A&M was able to cover that 12-point spread down in College Station. But this week, I'm going to go back to one of my picks from last week. I believe Arizona State, they're favored by 5.5 against San Diego State. And I'm just going to ride them until the train stops moving.
Yeah, good pick. I think I'm going to stay on the same train. I'm going to roll with the Tide. They covered for me last week. I think they're going to cover at Ole Miss. Tough road game. Ole Miss usually gives Alabama some trouble, but I think Alabama's a juggernaut in the SEC this year. 21 points. I got the Tide covering.
I'm going to stay in the Pac-12 for mine. Washington is favored by 6.5 against conference foe Utah. Utah had a lot of hype around them going into the season. They haven't proven anything to me that show that they can compete with a top offense in Washington, so I have them covering the spread.
Yeah, and I got Wisconsin. Sorry about that. I got Wisconsin covering against BYU. BYU, they've kind of been in a little bit of a no man's land ever since they've went independent. So I got Wisconsin covering at home.
Upset. I'm going to take the underdog. TCU is 13.5-point underdogs to Ohio State. I think TCU, there's no way that they lose that game by more than 10 points. I think they're really going to compete. Patterson's going to coach up that defense, and it's going to be a really tightly contested ball game at AT&T Stadium.
Hard to bet against a Gary Patterson coach team. And finally, for my last pick, I'm going to take the Oklahoma State Cowboys to cover against Boise State. Kind of a toss-up, 2.5 points. Oklahoma State's actually favored in that game. They are the home team. But I think Taylor Cornelius will come out, settle things down, and I think that the Cowboys will take down the Broncos.
Well, if you want to see how these teams did last week, I'll put the link down in the description. We'll be back here next Wednesday. We will break down this week's games and look ahead to the following week. This is two guys, one sport. Thanks for watching.